So there was a lot of talk on Friday about interest rates going down and this massive swing down in interest rates the lowest they've been in like 4 or 5 years. And did interest rates go down on Friday? Yes. Did they stay down? No. They literally went down for a couple of hours and then they were right back up. And let's talk about why. So Trump's plan is for the Federal Reserve essentially to buy $200 billion in mortgage bonds, which is what determines truthfully what our interest rates are going to be, not the national interest rate that you always see being announced after each Fed meeting. However, 200 billion sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, especially that's what I feel like I have in student loan debt. So 200 billion is a lot until you look at the fact that there are trillions of bonds out there. So 200 billion doesn't actually make a significant dent, unfortunately. And it will cause small changes in interest rates, but not a large enough change to truly affect affordability. So why would he want all these bonds purchased? Well, if you remember back in 2020 to 2022, the federal government purchased a ton of mortgage bonds. Interest rates were what? The lowest they've ever been. So the theory is, oh, we'll get them to buy bonds again. It'll drive the interest rates down. However, the government also sold a good majority of those bonds afterwards, and interest rates went back up, along with inflation going up and everything else as inflation was reintroduced into the economy. So 200 billion bonds isn't going to necessarily fix things. It may cause small changes, which are always appreciated, but it may also not cause long-term changes, depending on how long the Federal Reserve would keep those bonds. The biggest piece, though, is that Trump doesn't get to decide who purchases bonds and how they purchase bonds. If you have seen any news, you know that Trump and the Federal Reserve are like enemies for the majority of the year. Trump wants one thing, the Federal Reserve wants a different thing. They're constantly trying to push and pull against each other. So this is another thing where Trump is going to the Federal Reserve saying, hey, this is what I think we need. And the Federal Reserve will likely go, hey, thanks for the feedback. We'll see. Until eventually Trump is able to put a new Fed chair in place, and then we may see some of his wishes come. So the announcement was made last week for Trump's directive. Rates immediately started to shift, not because bonds were purchased, because investors believed this was going to be positive. So rates started to shift, and rates went right back up by Friday afternoon because they realized nothing's actually happening yet. So rates are still, on average, slightly above a 6. Again, as I've said, for most of this year and last year, still better than we were a few years ago, still increases affordability overall. But did we see a massive change in rates? No. Are rates below 6 again? Not typically, unless you're doing like a 15-year mortgage or maybe you have a VA loan that tends to run lower rates anyway. I tell everyone it doesn't matter what national rates are. It only matters what you have access to rate-wise based on your credit, your debt-to-income ratio, the type of property you're buying, how you're buying it. So tracking national rates is helpful in a way, but it's like tracking gas prices. It really matters what car you're driving. So reach out. Let's talk about your situation and where you could be.